So I wanted to say thank you so much for everyone who's coming out to check out Brian Face and listen to what he has to say as far as financial considerations, especially right now, given the current climate. So just a couple housekeeping items. I have muted everybody except for Brian, just so we can respect everybody's eyes and ears and time for this one. But if you do have questions, there is a chat section. So if you look on the bottom of your screen, there's a chat button, and once you click that, it will open up a section off to the right where you are able to write in your questions. You'll notice there's a blue kind of box or window at the bottom, and you can click who you want to select that message to go to. You're welcome to send that directly to me, or you can send it to anyone, and I'll field those questions and try to funnel them to Brian at the right time so that we have a nice, smooth, and informative session. So by all means, utilize that if you have questions, because chances are if you want to know something, other people in the session want to know that too. So again, thank you so much for being here. At this time, I'd love to introduce Brian Face from Face to Face Planning. He is an amazing financial planner who's going to give you guys a ton of great and useful information of what to do right now in this current climate. So without further ado, the floor is yours, Brian.
Hello, thanks for, I want to thank Ellen in particular, because she put this together, and maybe she pushed me over the edge of never doing a virtual webinar before, because that's nothing I've ever done. Like many of us, we're having to adapt in the time. But what is a little bit unique is I have been working virtually with clients for close to 4 years now. So that wasn't new for my business one-on-one, but this is a little newer from a situation where we're actually doing kind of a webinar or seminar. So what I'm going to kind of run is go over a few things, go over what my business is, how I work with clients, go over stuff about the stimulus check. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the market updates. We're going to kind of talk about some things you could do to kind of help you get through, you know, this time, with depending on where you're at with everything. And so that's kind of where, and then I want you to be able to ask questions. That's really why we wanted to have this, is what's on your mind. And if we can just help each one of you a little bit, hopefully that'll kind of move you to the next step going through this process, which all of us, I'm guessing, depending on where you are, we're staying at home. So our life is a little different. I did also want to say shout out to any of the parents out there that are working and they have children, in particular the single parents. I don't know how you do it, because I'm not a single parent and I have 2 little kids. So, and I will show you though. So here, let me start kind of sharing my screen, and then we'll go over, kind of go through this process. So hold on one second. And all right, can everybody see it?
You are good to go, Brian.
Okay, so my firm is called Face to Face Financial Planning. I started this firm about 4 years ago, and I started in the business originally 3 months before our wonderful 2008 crash in the market. So I would say that this has not been my first time to go through, let's say, uncertainty in the markets. But what we also have to know when I make that comment is that on average, we have a recession every 7 to 8 years. So even though we kind of think this is all new, we have to remember this isn't really new. This is something that actually happens. Now, the situation may be new, which we'll talk a little bit about. But about 3.5, 4 years ago, I started what's called a fee-only financial planning firm. And I'm just going to talk real quick about what that is. Fee-only means I do not accept any commission. So I'm always a fiduciary for a client. Less than 10% of all financial planning firms are fee-only, and less than 5% are CFP, which is Certified Financial Planner, and fee-only. I personally believe that's the route that firms are going to go, because I think people want advice, but they want to know at all times clients are put first. So if you know other areas like people that sell annuities, or sell life insurance, they're getting paid from the company. They're not getting paid from the client. And so sometimes there can be discrepancy there. So that's the reason I went fee only, because I thought that was the direction that you know, the industry is going to go. And I see more and more clients especially if you saw in the news a couple of years ago, they were trying to pass a fiduciary rule. It didn't ever happen, but a lot of people find me just because of that. They're looking for a fiduciary. In Kalamazoo, there is only 4 firms that are on what's called NAPFA, NAPFA, which is a nonprofit organization for fee-only financial planning firms. So there's only 4 in Kalamazoo. So that's a little bit about my firm. And one other thing is my fee structure is a little unique. I have hourly planning, I have one-time financial plans, and then I have more of a traditional model, which is where someone pays for me to help do financial planning and also manage their money. So if you have any questions, my email's on there, my phone number's on there. Feel free to reach out to me. And let me see if I can, oh, here's my family. So that's a little bit about me. This is my family. I have 2 little kids, a almost 2-year-old and an almost 4-year-old. So that's what I was talking about. As you can imagine, my life is a little crazy. My wife works full time. I work full time, and our kids are at home. So we're taking shifts. So you guys got me on one of the shifts. So which is typically nap time and quiet time for the older one. So if you hear anything stomping, I apologize. It must be my older one. He's jumping off a bed or something. Hopefully he's okay, but we'll figure that out later. So that's my family. I'm from Kalamazoo, went to Western Michigan University, somebody that moved to Florida for 10 years, then came back, and I've been back now for about 6-7 years. Happy to be back in West Michigan, plan on staying here for the long term. Maybe become a snowbird someday, I don't know, like some of you. So that's a little bit about my family. So what I thought we'd do today is talk about some things that I kind of follow. So this is a guy named Carl Richards. And I want to put what's happening in the market in perspective. If we look at everything, and not just the market, because I think this is a unique situation where there's a lot of uncertainty in our life. Where in 2008, it was really about uncertainty in our retirement or in the stock market, and maybe in our job market eventually, but it took a little while to trickle down. But the reason I was going to talk about the haircut, Tom, as we were talking earlier, was this side my wife did. Okay, doesn't look bad. This side over here, if you see this little spot here, now this is a week ago. Let's just say I cut the clippers a little tight. So I'm going to use this hair analogy. In the situation, the hair, okay, if I think about it, at the time I was thinking in this days scenario. But really, on the other side, that's what it's going to look like in a decade, okay? So what I mean by that is, if we look at a short period of anything in our life, it's maybe bumpy, because that's kind of what our life is. There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. You're going to make some money, and then your dishwasher's going to go out. But hopefully at the end of the day, you're still moving forward, okay, in everything we do in life. So this one is one that I say, what can we focus on? And in investing, it's no different. If you look at a long-term 10-year plus trajectory, if you have even a diversified portfolio, you should have always made money in a 10-year span. Now, if you look at it over a year or 2 years, well, that might not be the situation, but that's kind of the thing that we want to focus on is long-term. We can't focus on short-term. This one here is one that I kind of think about, is because the reality is when about a month ago, it's probably about a month ago, I think it was May 22nd or something like, not May, March 22nd, when the market was at its bottom, many people were fearful. And some people made decisions that said, I can't do this anymore. And so they took their money out of the market. And what studies have shown is people that have advisors on average, and this is from Vanguard, they did this study over a 10-year period. On average, people that had an advisor earned 3% more a year. But what was so interesting to me about the study was not about the actual difference between what one fund did or the other. They said 1.5% was actually about emotion. And for me, that's kind of what I like to focus on with clients, because I believe money is only a tool. I think too many times we think of money as, I want to say almost like it has power over our lives, where I would argue what it should be is just a tool for us to be able to do things. And if we look at the long-term situation, and that's what kind of Vanguard did, was, hey, over 10 years, you're probably going to do better off if you have somebody help you, because the reality is there's always things we don't know. So I like this study, and then I'm going to go, this I shared with all my clients about, so if any of my clients are on the call, which a couple of them asked me, said they might be on the call. So if they are, this is something I shared with them about a month ago when we were going through the tough times. The reason I show this chart is just because what this is kind of showing us is the blue is the positive and the red is the negative. And this is since 1926. Now, we don't have to be financial people to just be able to look at that and say, there's a lot more positive than there are negative. Now, this chart for me also thinks about our own lives. Typically, we are going to have more positive in our life than negative for anything we do. But there are going to be some times that are tough, okay? And then the other chart that I was going to share, and then I'm going to kind of go down some other things and then open it up for questions. This is the other one that I kind of talk to clients about. This is the S&P 500 index. So this is going to be the index that typically you see on the news. They either talk about the Dow Jones or the S&P 500. But what this shows is since 1990 to 2017, so for 27 years, if you missed the best 25 days, so less than one day a year, you would have averaged about half of what you would have if you would have just kept invested in the market. And so I don't think you should listen. Nobody should tell you that they know what's going to happen tomorrow, because we don't. But what we know is that if we're certain, even in this situation, that we believe 3 years from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, we're going to be through this and we're going to be moving forward, then I think then we have to trust that that's going to work out. We always have to think, what is the stock market? All the stock market really is, it's companies. That's all it is. So if we think we're going to keep going to the restaurants, and I know there's a lot of uncertainty right now, so you think, well, I don't know if you're going to go back to the restaurant for 3 months or 6 months. The stock market is actually basing on it's called a leading indicator. So it might be looking 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months out. So that's why right now there's a lot of confusion. And people say, well, the economy's not doing really good, but why did the stock market just move up so fast? That doesn't make any sense. And I'll be honest, sometimes it doesn't make sense. And they might be wrong. It might end up longer. But typically what they're saying is, do we believe 12 months or 18 months from now, things will be better and moving forward? So that's kind of what the stock market is saying right now. Now, let's see what else I got. I didn't do a lot on the slide, so I think I might be. Okay, I think that's the last one I'm going to share with you guys. So any question about this so far? I'm going to kind of do it in segments. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I can't hear you, Alan. You muted yourself.
As of right now, Brian, you are in the clear.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about the stimulus check that some of you may or may not have gotten yet, but should be getting. The basics to the stimulus checks are this. And the two things are the income level. So that's going to make a decision if you're going to get anything at all. If you're a single person, the income level basically is $75,000. It technically phases out at $100,000 of income. Okay. If you're a married couple, it is $150,000 or below, you will get the whole check. If it's under $200,000, you'll still get something, but it's going to be less than the whole check. The amount is $1,200 per person and $500 per child. That's what's set up right now. Whether they add that later, I'm going to talk about some of the confusion out there, though. So the main confusion I've heard many times is it's going to be taxed. It's not going to be taxed. So you will not be paying tax on that money. The other thing that I hear a lot is, well, this is just a refund of my 2020 return, meaning that you are basically you're going to get it up front and then it's going to come off your 2020. The confusion is this. What it really is it is based off your 2020. However, it's going to be based off of your last tax return. So if you filed 2019 tax return, it's going to be based on that. If you didn't file 2019, they're going to base it on 2018. Now, let's say that you made more money in 2018 or 2019 to be able to get the stimulus check, but in 2020, due to the situation, you made less money. That's when you would get money back. Or let's say you had a child in 2020 Well, they didn't know about that in 2018 or 2019. So you'll get a refund, we'll say, towards that in 2020. If they give you the wrong amount, which could happen, I've read a lot about that. They've given people the wrong amount. Well, you'll get a refund on your 2020. So that's kind of how that works. Now, what they're going to do with the stimulus checks, again, if you haven't received it, is first people that are going to get them are going to be people that have direct deposit, meaning they filed their tax returns in 2018 or 2019, again, or whatever the last return is, and they're going to get it through direct deposit. There is, on the IRS website, there's something that's called, I think it's called Get My Payment, and it's a status button. A lot of people had problems with that, including me. If I click on it, it tells me it doesn't know. So it's not I'm not sure that, to be honest, in my situation, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'll get it, or it might have to wait till 2020. So that's just how it is. And for people that are retired, because that's one of the questions, you will get it. Now, there is a little misunderstanding of how you're going to get it, because the confusing part is if you're on Social Security, you are getting the Social Security through your direct deposit. However, from what it seems right now is you're still going to get a mailed check, which they said they're going to start mailing checks in May, and they might not get them until the end of June. It has to do with your income level. If you're lower income, you're supposed to get them before higher income. So some of that is still a little unclear. Okay, but the clear things are you're not going to have to pay it back. Even if, this is the other one, let's say that you made less money in 2018 and you got the check, but now in 2020, you make more money and you actually couldn't receive the check. They are not going to do what's called a clawback provision. So they will not take that money back. Any questions about the stimulus check? No. Okay. The markets. So I talked a little bit about the markets. I also do a quick market update. The reality is the market doesn't know what's going to happen over this summer. What we know is that as many states, or some states, are opening back up. If we're in Michigan, I just read now we're moved to currently May 15th. So I don't want to tell anybody any bad news, but I just read it today. But they're going to change some restrictions. So some states like Georgia are supposed to open up, I believe, Monday. And so what's going to happen is the economy is going to gradually open back up. And as they gradually open back up, we're going to see how do people react. Do they go see Ellen, at the gym? Or maybe only one person sees Ellen an hour. I mean, some things might change. Or maybe more people go see Ellen, but less people go to the big gyms because it's just, it's a different situation. Okay. What we also know about humans is we are creatures of habit. So eventually, someday, we will probably go back to the habit that we liked. And we'll probably get rid of some habits that we didn't like. And I think this is a good time when we think about our budget or what we're spending. I don't like to call it a budget because some people think that's a bad word. So we'll call it a spending plan, or whatever makes you feel better. We'll call it, okay, is think about what you care about the most. Because a lot of times we find that the things that bring us joy in life, we're not actually spending as much money as we could be, and we're spending money on things that we don't care as much about. So through this process, I think we're all going to hopefully take good out of this situation and say, okay, what's important to me? Maybe I should be spending more time or money on my health. Or maybe I should be spending more time or money in paying somebody to help me with their finances. Or all these other areas that at the end of the day, we know that our health is probably going to lead us to live longer if we take care of it now. If we start planting seeds now, it'll probably have us live longer, which does mean you're going to probably need more money because you're going to live longer, so you're going to have to be a little smarter with your money. So that's kind of where the market's up. My recommendation for everybody is, if you do it yourself, you have an advisor, stay diversified, make sure that you're in a risk level that you're comfortable with. Because a lot of people, maybe the last couple of years, were taking more risk in their retirement than they should have, because let's face it, for 10 years, the market just went up. And it really, you felt like this is not a big deal. We're just going to keep going up. And I always knew in the back of my mind, well, someday this will stop. I didn't know when. I didn't know why. I didn't know it was going to be coronavirus, but I knew it would be something. And that's just how it works. Just like in general, right now we have a lot of debt in our households, and that's typically because as you feel good about the stock market and in the economy, we spend more, or we'll put more on our credit card, or we'll buy a bigger house, or we'll buy a bigger TV, or we'll do a new car. The average house spends $500. Average person spends $500 a month on a car loan. So that's much higher than it used to be. So through that process, again, the stock market, what I do find it is tough about it in general is this. We want to invest in the stock market when it's high, but we don't want to when it's low. It's just a natural feeling where it says, oh, the market is high, everything's going well, I want to invest in the market. But what we know about people, like we'll use Warren Buffett, because most people know Warren Buffett. He says you should invest when people are fearful and not when they are not fearful. Because what he knows is that that's just the cycle of markets. So again, stay diversified, make sure that it's a risk level that you can handle. I mean, there's current portfolios that are only down 3 to 5% year to date, even though if they're diversified correctly, even though the stock market, when I say market, I'm saying what they see on TV and they say this is down. I'm saying S&P 500 or Dow, where most people are not 100% in those areas. The market might be down, I think, depending on the day, but it's probably down close to 20%, but it's came back almost half of what it was in the shortest time span ever. So it went down faster than it's ever done, and it's came back to where it's at faster than it's ever done. Typically, these are 18-month cycles. So to kind of give you an idea. Sorry,
I have a question on that, Brian. So with regards to some of the market projections and expectations, and then you brought up the stimulus check. So now let's say people are coming into, let's say, $2,000 maybe plus more dollars than they anticipated having right now. Everybody can use that money, but how do you recommend? Is there kind of like, okay, if you are at this point where you have debt, do this. If you don't have debt, do what you might recommend. Now I know that's super general, considering that you normally dive much deeper into each individual client's needs, but is there any recommendations you could give to somebody who is going to come into that? We had a conversation with somebody just yesterday. They said, I think with the stimulus check, I could finally buy a boat. And I'm sitting there going, I know you have so much debt. You probably shouldn't be spending that money on a boat. But things like that. So that might be something to help everybody.
All right. So I'll be talking about a couple of things there. First and foremost, if you need to eat and pay bills, that's what you're going to have to do. So I'm going to kind of take those people off the table only because that's what you have to take care of yourself, right? Your roof and your, I will tell you though, there is a lot of programs out there from credit cards to mortgages where if you are in a situation financially where you can't afford certain things, I would call them before you use your stimulus check on those items, right? If you can afford it, then I tell people pay your bills. But if you're in a situation where you can't afford it, then I would say keep that stimulus check to be able to live the next month, right? And call that mortgage company or call that credit card company. Sorry. Can you guys hear that?
Yes.
I don't know how to mute it, so you just have to wait a second. So that's the problem with technology. You have everything running through everything. All right, so I'm going to try to talk over this because it's going to go off in just a second. Okay, thank you, whoever. So let's go to what you could do if you don't have any bills. Okay, so and that is a lot of people, to be honest. Most retirees, this stimulus check isn't really changing their life because their life hasn't really changed that much. Maybe their investments have went down some, but what they spend every month and they didn't lose their job and things like that. So that might be a little different for them. They might be thinking, well, what can I do? First thing I tell people is you could give. So if there's something that you care about or there's something that you think, I want to help with right now, whether it's food or the healthcare organizations or giving extra money to the pizza delivery guy, that's kind of where I think the first thing you could do, but that's not for me to say. I just kind of give you an idea. The other ideas would be this. If you're not retired, you could put money in a Roth IRA. Roth IRAs are wonderful. Roth IRAs are one of my favorite things, mainly because there's a couple things about Roth IRAs. If you put the money in, one, you could earn money because you could invest it. But let's just say you needed to take the money back out. Well, you can always take any money you put in a Roth IRA without penalty, the money you put in. Now, if it earned money, then you can't take it out. Okay, you can't take the earnings out. You could take your original portion. So if you put in $5,000 and you needed the $5,000 back in 2 years, you could take the $5,000 back. But if it earned $1,000, you have to leave that in. And then there's rules when you can take that out. I don't want to get too into that because we'll go down the rabbit hole. But so by age and different things like that, you can take the money out. Also, Roth IRAs, the money you put in grows tax-free for the future. So I would say you could save the money if you don't have an emergency fund. So maybe you're okay, but you don't have an emergency fund. Please don't go to buy the boat. Put the $2,000 in your emergency fund, for the rainy day, because that's one thing we know is that there might be a rainy day. And I think that's one thing that I think this is teaching all of us, is that when clients come work with me, we focus on them, especially people working in particular, have 3 to 6 months of savings, of living savings, because you don't know what's going to happen. I wrote an article in a, I think it was Business Insider about 2 months ago, and it was about what to do to prepare for a recession. So I found it kind of weird that in Erie that the recession started like a month after. But what it was really about is that recessions for most of us come at different times, right? So they're our own recession. We lose our job or something happens or we have a health situation. This is just a little unique because everybody's in it together, where typically we're kind of doing these things individually. So make sure that you try to save that 3 to 6 months. For retired people, I always say that you should have a year to 2 years in something that's not going to really fluctuate much. In case these situations happen, then you don't have to worry because you say, oh, okay, I got 2 years of living expenses in something that's not going to fluctuate, whether it's treasury bills or whether it's your savings account or whatever you're comfortable with. And then if my other things like my equities or my stocks go up and down, I can let those recover. Because that's where the problems typically come in that I see people the most, is more than anything we can do in retirement, or when we're not retired, but typically in retirement in these areas, is making sure we're managing how we're taking the money out. So 2 years ago when the market was down a little bit and you wanted to put siding on the house, I would ask my clients, could you wait till next year? And a lot of times they say, yeah, no, it's not a big deal. We'll just wait till next year. So now when the market's up, then we do those things. And if you think about it, if that's a 10% fluctuation, that could really save you a lot of money. So I think a good planner can help you manage where to take the money from, whether it's a taxable account or a Roth IRA or your savings account, and make sure that that helps you the most. Because what I've seen with clients is sometimes you've saved enough money, but if you don't take the money correctly, then your probability to run out is pretty high. So I kind of deviated from that, but really it was give and save. And then the areas would be, either now, if you're not retired, save extra money in your 401k at work. Why not? Now, again, this is not when we typically feel. Our feeling is, I don't want to put extra money in. In fact, the most common question I hear lately from my friends and my family and my clients is, should I stop putting money in my 401k? And I say, no, because what your planner is doing, I'm actually putting as much money as I can in my 401k right now, because I believe that in the end, this will work out. So
I think those are very good points of understanding, making decisions based on emotions versus those big goals and convictions. Because if you make it based on emotion, I think the best analogy I saw was if your alarm goes off in the morning at 5 a.m., and in that moment, you have to make a decision based on how you feel, well, you're not going to get out of bed. But if you make that decision based on what are my goals and convictions and plans for the day, well, then you're going to be the first person out of bed, right? So shifting that mindset and that perspective on a bigger picture is so smart. So having somebody like you do that is really important. Somebody asked a really good question about potentially, there's quite a bit of fluctuation right now in oil, and how that might be affecting investments as well as overall projections. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, let me talk about a little bit of oil. So one thing to know is that oil is a futures contract. It's like a commodity. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend investing in oil unless you're going to invest like in the big oil companies that you know about. But oil oil typically does help or hurt the stock market. And obviously, if you're paying attention to oil, last month it actually went negative, which people don't get. How could that even be? And what that really is what's happened is there's so much oil that there's no place to put the oil. And so people don't want it. Okay, so it's just in abundance. The oil industry is a little unique. Most of us, most companies, if there was a low demand, so people weren't buying iPhones or whatever, Apple would make less iPhones. The oil industry doesn't do that. I don't know why, but that's just the way it was. It's just, hey, less demand for oil. We're just going to keep pumping as much as we were doing before. So how it affects the overall market, I mean, it used to be like the last couple of years, if oil went up, stocks went up. But there's a little bit of divergence now, I think, because we might see stocks go up over the next 6 months, but we might actually see oil do not much of anything, because they're still trying to get that demand, right? We need to start getting in our car. We need to start getting in the airplane, and we need to start doing those things that burn oil. Otherwise, it's not going to get filled up. So ask that question one more time, so I'll make sure.
They were just, somebody was asking it more so to see how oils might be affecting some investments and some overall trends.
Yeah, the only thing I could say is there's going to be probably some changes in oil. And if I was living in Texas or Oklahoma or some of these like oil rich states, I would be concerned, because because what we have to remember is that, oil right now, let's say a barrel of oil is $15, $20 a barrel. It costs most U.S. producers close to $30 or $35 even to break even, where let's say Russia or Saudi Arabia, which are the ones that, if you see on the news, have been kind of pushing the oil down. I think Russia can do it at $5 or $10, because they're getting their oil from a different spot. They're just sticking a hole in the ground and sucking the oil up, where we're doing what's called fracking. And so it costs us more to produce the oil. So what we're learning here is that, one, there may be some other energy things that we should be doing so we're less reliant. I believe that 6 months ago, we thought we were we were the leading oil producer technically, but we still had to hit a certain number to make it work. So there's going to be some consolidation. Mm-hmm. And so that may affect your investment some, but the S&P 500 is only made up of 2% energy stocks now, or it used to be close to 20%. So it's not, if you're buying an index, which I'm a proponent of index funds, just because you don't know what's going to happen. So that's be part of your diversified portfolio is index funds. So I don't think it's going to affect your portfolio if you're invested
appropriately.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Now talk a little bit about the stimulus check, possibly throwing that at your mortgage principal, or maybe is this a good time to talk refis and stuff like that?
So refis about a month ago went on fire because the rates went really, really low for a really short period. In fact, they were going so low that they stopped going down, because the mortgage companies almost said, we're just not going to give you any lower rates. So what they were based on, they still wouldn't go down. So, but now they've kind of came back where it's still very good rates. So like if you wanted to buy a house, or that's still great. You refinance. What we always have to remember with the refinance is we're trying to look at the long term. So we want to look at what's called a break even. So we want to see how much is the refinance going to cost, and then how much am I saving every month. Mm-hmm. And then I basically figured out so if it's costing me $3,000 and I'm saving $100, well, it's going to take me 30 months to be positive. And that might make sense if you're going to stay there long term. Putting it on your mortgage, that might be a good idea, or it might not. I will tell you, one of the number one things I see is that people have a paid off mortgage, which is really good, but then they don't have enough in savings or in retirement for retirement. And so what we're trying to do with everything in financial planning is you might have 100 different levers you can pull. We're trying to make sure that you pull the right lever. And when we actually do a financial plan for a client, we can show them, okay, if you put extra money on your mortgage, or you put that money in your retirement account, 20 years from now, this is what it looks like. And then what decision do you want to make? And I think that's where many financial decisions we make based on the knowledge we have now, but we don't know what could happen in 20 years. So that's what I like about financial planning and using a financial planning software, is that we actually run analogies. And all my clients that are going through what they're going through now, this was part of their analogy. This was part of testing their portfolio to see, could you afford to do these things? Because what I use is something called a Monte Carlo simulation. It runs 1,000 scenarios over the last 100 years to kind of stress test and see, could you afford to do that? Could you not? So I think that stimulus check, it could be good to go on your mortgage, or it might not. And refinance, the same thing. I would say, well, it could be good to refinance, or it might not. Depends on what you're doing.
That makes total sense. Any other advice you would give overall for people who are afraid? I think this, like you said, it really was a test to see whether people could sustain a drought, and if you will, and a drain on your own personal family situation. And so I think that testing, a lot of people started to feel some vulnerabilities within their portfolio or within just their general savings, plan. So at this point, I think you brought up some really good things about, use this as an opportunity to reflect and analyze your portfolio. So to make sure that not only you're making good decisions moving forward, but then if something happens, let's say in another 8 years, how could you prepare best? So I guess could you evolve a little bit more what that was?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to talk about a couple things that I see right now, and I had it on my list. So things that you see a lot on TV right now, you also want to think about. And what I mean by that is advertisements for gold, advertisements for annuities. Annuities. I've seen so many commercials with annuities. Now, I'm going to give you my personal belief on annuities, and I'm not telling people they're bad, good, and different. I'm just going to tell you where I'm at. Well, and this is part of what you're kind of saying. This is what we kind of see right now, and this is where I get a lot of questions. So, an annuity is a insurance product. So you're giving your money to the insurance company, and they're saying, we're going to guarantee you something, right? Let's say they say, we'll give you 5% a year off of this $100,000 that you gave us. So we're going to give you $5,000. Okay. The only problem with this is two things. There's inflation. On average, inflation is about 2.5%. So if you're getting $5,000, but every month or every year, but then your inflation's 2.5%, okay, that's roughly $2,500 that you're losing every year. So 10 years from now, you're still only going to get $5,000. However, you're going to have more money, or more things you're going to need to spend money on. So I think annuities or any insurance product, they seem to really advertise when people are scared. The other things that I see with annuities is, and the only reason I'm talking about annuities because I see them advertise a lot now, and this is one of the, I find that people do it kind of in a scare tactic. They're sold, they're not bought. And what I mean by that is they pay somebody anywhere from 7 to 10% of what you're putting in. So let's say $100,000, they're paying that person $7,000 to $10,000 up front the second you sign that dotted line. Now, my thought there is this. For that client, if they were my client, I'd have to help them for 10 years to get paid the same. Well, I'm going to have to do a good job for 10 years to make sure that they're taken care of. That other thing is being sold, and it's locking the person in. I truly believe if you're being locked into something, and it was so wonderful, okay, if this is so great, because that's how they sell these things, right, then why would I lock somebody in? Because if it's so great, I'm not going to get rid of it because it's wonderful. They're locking you in for two reasons. One, first and foremost, it's usually they're locking you in for that 7 years because they paid that person or that advisor 7%. And so they have to get their money back. And the only way to do that is to lock you in and use your money. Now, things like CDs are different. Okay. There's a lot of fees in annuities, whereas CD, you go to the bank. One, they're not going to give you that higher rate. So that's right now they might get you 2.5%. There's no fees in that or anything. I mean, that's just a bank product. And there's nothing wrong with it. But if I'm getting a 2.5% CD and inflation's 2% right now, it's not the same number that I think in my head. So that's one of the things that I see right now. Gold, I see a lot. So you see those kind of things. And it's fair because this is a scary time. So I completely understand people being concerned and say, hey, I want a Band-Aid that's going to fix that. But when we're buying an insurance product, we have to remember the people guaranteeing the product is an insurance company. So I'm going to show you a chart one other thing based on what you just talked about. And hold on. Okay. All right. So this is one more from the same guy, Carl Richards, the guy I follow. The story we're telling ourselves when we're scared is that I may lose all my money. That's the story we're telling ourselves. And that's why we may buy an annuity or any other thing that guarantees us something. But what we have to remember is this. If I'm going to lose all my money because the stock market's going to go to zero, then the insurance company will not be around either, because they're going to be bankrupt. And if an insurance company goes bankrupt and you have an annuity, they'll give you the amount of money that's left in, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. They're going to give you the amount of money basically minus the fees and minus everything you've taken out, okay, what you started with, okay? So I don't want to go too far because annuities are confusing. That's the other thing about annuities. They're confusing. So make sure you have somebody help you. If you're interested in an annuity, call a fee-only planner, pay them an hourly rate to just go over it with you. That's not getting paid any commission at all to help you. And if you still want to do it, that's okay. I tell people, hey, people buy extended warranties on tons of things. I mean, you can read any of these Kipler magazine or Money Mag. They're going to show you that it's not a good value to buy an extended warranty, but it makes some people feel better, where you're paying for something to feel better. I say we should insure the large risk, not the small risk, because if the TV breaks, for most of us, we can go buy a new TV if we had to. It wouldn't be the end of the world, right? So how we can feel better is to get back to the reality. Okay, so the thought is that maybe the market might go to zero, which means my money may go to zero, or I might lose my money. And we can't also remember that investing is not your savings account. If you take your money out of your savings account, it is gone. It's never coming back. Okay, if you took that $100 out of your savings. However, if it's in your retirement account, what we should think is it's called fluctuation. It may very well be back 5 years from now, 2 years from now, 1 year, we don't know. But it's not the savings account. So we have to look at it in a different mindset. So if everything went to zero, well, Ellen wouldn't have any money and I wouldn't have any money and we'd be in this together. So we'd learn how to, what did I say? We'd learn how to farm, and we'd learn how, I don't know. But we're assuming in that situation that we're never going to go to a store and we're never going to go to a restaurant. So I think we have to go to what is real. And so you talked about feelings, Alan. So that's what I like about this chart. So we have our stories that we tell ourselves, and we have our feelings that, let's face it, some of these stories can be kind of scary. And we're all different. Some of us will go to the worst thing. You got a fever, then you must have coronavirus. Like, we're just going to go there, right? Others are not going to do that. So everybody's different. And so you kind of got to know how you are. Then we have our feelings that are going to impact what we're thinking about that. And then we have our thoughts. So the internet is a beautiful thing, because guess what? No matter what we believe, we can support on the internet. We can go find it. It's going to support it. Or I know I got those. I got that symptom. I'm for sure going to die tomorrow. I don't know. But, and then the facts. What's the facts? Well, it's probably not going to go to zero. And it may not come back to where it was in March or in May, whatever, February. Okay. Just like many of us, I don't know what tomorrow is sometimes. So, because that's where we're at right now in life. February. But then we also have to ask ourselves, was the stock market somewhat on a sugar high for a while? Was it real? Because it doesn't always just go up. It should kind of go up and down a little bit, and up and down and to the side and around. And it was just kind of going up. So I would say that's a little bit like any of us running our household in exuberance, where we just say, well, we're always going to get that bonus, or we're always going to make that big commission check. And maybe we're not, maybe we're not. So I think we have to live in reality. And investing, I kind of look at how can we make it at this current time to make your life simpler. Don't look at your statement every day. Don't look at your statement every week, probably. Maybe try to limit yourself to once a month or something, where, okay, we can see what's going on, but we don't want to because I really know that the clients that I have that look at their statements every day, it's tough. It's tough on them. It's just because their mood is almost based on how did my money come today? And then that should be so far away. What you need to do is really think about how, in this current time, how can I focus on my mind and my body and my money? So that's where I think Ellen could really come into place and say, more than ever, what am I eating? Am I walking around the block? Am I exercising? Am I watching the news 24/7? What am I doing? And what could I be doing, even if it's just one step? Even if it's just, I hate budgeting, but you know what? If I just wrote down my fixed cost today, I might feel better tomorrow. At least I know where I'm at. And I think that's a good thing with anything. Let's get a baseline, right? If I wanted to lose 20 pounds, but I don't even know how much I weigh, I don't have a baseline. So I need a baseline. And the other thing is I always put this analogy working with planners to personal trainers, only because a lot of people understand going to the gym, is that, you're not going to go to the gym and the 20 pounds is going to come off tomorrow. Ellen's going to say, hey, this is what you need to do. You got to, you need to start trying to eat healthier tomorrow. And if you could just, have one better meal tomorrow, and if you could just work out for 10 minutes when you never did before, there's going to be a change in your mind and in your body, hopefully. That's all. But and same thing with money. It's like, hey, if I can just put a little away today, compound interest is a beautiful thing. For most of us, we're not millionaires. We're just people that save and try to take care of our families. And if we can just do the right things for long enough, really, I always believe the stock market is the only way that any of us can retire. Because we can't just put it in a savings account because we don't have enough money. We're not millionaires. But that is an avenue to actually be able to do those things in the future. So try to focus on the facts. And it's okay to know what your stories are, because we all have stories. It's just the way it is. They might be from our childhood, or how our parents spent money, or how we spent money, or maybe we bought a car and we shouldn't have bought a car. We bought a house that we couldn't afford. Okay, well, what can we do right now? What could we do right now to make that a little better? So that's one of the things is, in my firm, we try to focus on helping people with decisions and helping them make, I don't even want to call them goals. I want to call them possibilities. And all I am is the guide that's trying to help you through those processes, because 10 years from now, it shouldn't be about what our return was. Because if the return was wonderful, but we didn't do anything that we wanted to do in our life, I would tell you that that's not going to make you satisfied. It's just not.
All those things make such wonderful sense. And I think anytime we are reevaluating aspects of our life, you brought up a good point of not taking everything all at once and assuming quick results. So I describe to folks about a spiral staircase going upward. And so if you're standing at the bottom and you're looking up at all of those stairs that you have to do, that's going to be pretty overwhelming. And so instead saying, you know what, today I'm going to take this one step, or I'm going to put away $10 today, right? And then tomorrow I'm going to put away $10 or $2 or whatever it might be. And just the fact that you're continuing to move forward and allow those decisions to compound over time, then just looking at that stair ahead, if you get 3 months in, then all of a sudden you can look back and go like, oh, look at how far I've come and look at how much I've done, without it being so overwhelming. Because once overwhelm sets in, your ability to make decisions, that actually is a different part of your brain, and you elicit all of these chemical responses and hormonal responses to that feeling of overwhelm. So your ability to actually think logically and make those rational decisions becomes significantly impaired. So when you can reduce overwhelm and educate yourself, look at the facts, and not necessarily make those things based on an emotional feeling, your ability to make better choices more frequently and consistently just exponentially grows. So Brian did an amazing job. Now, if anybody has more questions, we touched on a lot of different things, from stimulus check to your mortgage to car payments to anything like that. Put them in now into that chat section. But is there anything else you want to leave us with, Brian? I did put Brian's website in the chat section too. So if you have more questions, he has wonderful resources, and he is a wonderful resource that you can always access. But is there anything else you want to leave anybody with, Brian?
Well, Real quick, you made me think of something that for many people, they listen to somebody like a Dave Ramsey's, and he does this thing called the snowball debt. But now I don't know where everybody's at here. So for a lot of times people don't have any debt when they get to retirement, or, but I'm only going to touch on why he does it. Is that logically, in my mind, because I'm a finance person, I would say, well, I should pay off the 25% credit card first, because that's going to cost me the most. That's my highest interest rate credit card. But what Dave Ramsey says is, no, what you're going to do is you're going to pay the credit card off at the lowest balance, because he wants that snowball to start moving. And that's what Alan's talking about. He wants you to see that, man, I have a $20,000 of debt. Okay. But if I had 5 credit cards and now I just paid one off this month, now I only have 4 credit cards. So I feel like I'm doing a little better. So I think that's the same thing with compound interest or any of those things. And if it's not just your money, again, if it's for many of us, we'll say, well, at this point in our life, we say, I've never even worked out my life. Okay, then just walk around the block. Take 5 minutes. Do something, right? Anything that can kind of help us through this process. So I want to thank Ellen in particular for doing this, because I know she's doing a number of these, and I think it helps everybody. And we need to get out of our comfort zone. And so hopefully when we are lifted and we can leave our house, we can feel like we've done some things, and we're better off where we're actually at now than we were before. So
yeah, absolutely. And somebody actually just asked one last question about, what do you see as opportunities right now? And I think you touched base on, this is an opportunity to evaluate your portfolio, see where you have the holes, but also it's a whole opportunity for even a bigger picture than that to, reflecting on what you are doing in your life, those habits, those decisions and things like that. Is there anything else you wanted to comment on opportunities, whether it's in regards to personal or investment or anything like that?
Yeah, I think mainly you need to start with a baseline in everything you do. And I think planning for retirement in particular, if we think about it, it's the one area that is probably going to affect us the most from what we're able to do now and in the future when we do retire. But it's also the area that we never stop to actually have somebody help us to find out what we really need. And what I mean by that is the government, it used to be totally different, right? You have a pension or something like that, and they kind of took care of it. You went and worked somewhere, and then they're going to give you a pension, or maybe you're a teacher or something like that, and you're going to get a pension. But that's not the way it is for most people anymore. So you have to take care of yourself. But if you don't have a baseline, or you don't know if you need to be saving $100 a month or $500 a month, you're not really being fair to yourself. Because that's like, I want to know, I need to lose some weight, but I don't know how much weight I need to lose, because I've never even stopped to admit, I've never weighed myself. So what I say is find a planner. My recommendation is napfa.org. Find a planner on there. They're fee-only planners. They're, like I said, they have the same fiduciary standard to me. If you think I'm a good fit, reach out to me. If you don't, you think, that's fine. I want to make sure you find somebody that's going to be a fiduciary for you, do the right thing, and have them do a plan for you and get a baseline. Because I use this analogy lately is, imagine if you went to buy a house, you found the perfect house, you loved it, and it was your dream house, and it's $400,000. And you went to the bank and you said, hey, I want to buy this house. And they said, that's great. How much do you want to pay a month? And you're like, what do you mean? And they say, well, will you just tell us how much you want to pay a month, and we'll let you know when the house is paid off. I don't think anybody would buy the house, because it could be 10 years. It could be 50 years, could be 100 years, depending on how much I decide to start paying every month. That's kind of how we plan for retirement, is that we don't know. We don't know how much we need to save. We know if we save more than less, that's probably better, but we don't have a baseline. We don't have anybody to kind of get us there. So I would recommend finding a baseline, have somebody help you. If you don't feel like you're in the position, there's lots of things out there on the internet, probably free, kind of calculators and things like that. That'll at least get you started. Okay. I don't love the calculators because they're called what's considered straight line calculators, which, as you see, the stock market doesn't just go straight. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. So it's better to have something a little more accurate. But that's my recommendation for that situation. So try to do one thing tomorrow that you haven't done today, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be finance, something that makes you feel like you've moved forward. For some people, it might be just like, I took a shower today. I didn't take one yesterday because, right? It's like, hey, that's what happened. I took a shower, right? I combed my hair. Right? I get it. And that's how that's the situation. So anything I can do to help, if you just have questions, reach out to me. We could set up a 30-minute call. Doesn't cost you anything. So that's it.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Brian. And thank you everybody for tuning in. As you can see, I absolutely adore Brian. I think he's wonderful. He's got a great sense of humor, and he's got a great sense of what's going on in the world and how to apply it to your personal situation. But if you have more questions, reach out to Brian, reach out to me. We'll be continuing to try to bring you guys as much as we can as far as informative information during this time, so you can educate yourself and do one thing that you didn't do yesterday, just like Brian was saying. So thanks everybody for being here. Thank you again to Brian, and we love you more than you know, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.